Hello and welcome to Mythical Meeples. Today I'll be reviewing Madam Mim from Disney Villainous. So this is part of a series of reviews I've done for Disney Villainous, focusing on each character in turn. I've ranked the difficulty of each villain, placing them as easy, medium or hard. I've also outlined a basic strategy that I tend to follow when playing that villain, although it's by no means the definitive way to play. I'll be picking out my top 3 cards for each villain, although I largely ignore those that directly relate to the villain's victory goal, such as the Crown and Trident for Ursula, Titans for Heidi, the Magic Lamp for Jafar, that don't necessarily do anything other than achieving that goal. So Bigger and Badder introduces us to 3 new villains: Syndrome from The Incredibles, Lotso from Toy Story 3, and Madam Mim from The Sword in the Stone. The villains are very varied in difficulty, making this good as an expansion for players with other villains from the Villainous range, but less good if you're new to the game. For me, Bigger and Badder is one of the weaker box sets alongside the Despicable plots, and I'd recommend picking up Wicked to the Core, Evil Comes Prepared, or Perfectly Wretched first if you're looking for new villains to play as. If you like my content, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. This helps me grow as a channel and be seen by more people, and you can support me by becoming a member of Mythical Meeples or by supporting me on Patreon as well. There's links below for those where you gain access to new content, sneak peeks and behind the scenes. So on with the review. As I said before, today I'll be reviewing Madam Mim from Bigger and Badder for Disney Villainous. So Madam Mim is an incredibly fun villain to play as. However, she's also one of the strongest villains in the game. Madam Mim must defeat the 7 Merlin transformations, or heroes, using a specific Mim transformation, or your allies. Although this sounds challenging, it's easier than it seems, as you always start with a Merlin transformation on your board, and when you defeat one, you immediately play the next. Mim is definitely a villain that feels like her victory is inevitable, so when playing against her, you have to make sure you play quickly, or have a board that can fate Mim again and again to try and find those Merlins. Madam Mim is an incredibly strong board, probably in the top 3 with Evil Queen and Dr. Facilia, but she can be beaten. But for this reason, she is in the easy tier of villains to play as. My strategy when playing Madam Mim is to put as many of the Mim transformations at the dueling ground, and then get as many Merlin transformations into play at the dueling ground as well. This way you can move there on one turn, and you can just defeat a lot of transformations in one turn, which makes it really, really hard for your opponent to counter. But how to achieve that? Well, that brings me on to my top 3 cards. The first one being Wizard's Duel. Wizard's Duel lets you play the top card of your Merlin transformation deck. At first glance, this may not seem that strong, as you play Merlin transformations when you defeat one anyway, but having more than one in play means you can potentially defeat more than one Merlin in a turn, racing towards your goal. With an easily accessible move a hero action, you don't have to worry about being overwhelmed by heroes. And it also lets you counter the fate card that moves a hero. There are 4 of those in your fate deck, so being able to move a hero is really, really beneficial. Additionally, with Wizard's Duel, as I previously mentioned, you can potentially line up multiple Vanquish actions in a turn by having 4 different Merlin transformations at one location and 4 different Mim transformations. In this way, you guarantee defeating 4 Merlin transformations in a turn, as you draw a new one immediately when one is defeated. So if you have all 4 lined up here, and 4 here, you defeat one, you draw your next Merlin transformation, you are guaranteed another Vanquish action. Speaking of Vanquish actions, it's time for my next card, a Sporting Chance. So a Sporting Chance is an interesting card for me to put in. It's not necessarily the strongest, but it does allow you to counter your fate deck. So Sporting Chance lets you recover cards from your discard pile, which is incredibly useful for Mim. Most villains want to vanquish heroes to win, some even need to as part of their goal. And the Sporting Chance lets you choose a card from your discard pile to put into your hand. The main use for this is recovering a transformation, especially if Bird Arthur or Germ Merlin have forced you to discard 1 or more Mim transformations, or Merlin has been used to recover a Merlin transformation. In the early game, or unlikely event that I have no other useful cards to recover, I like to use this to pick up as big as a house to let me generate a little bit of extra power. Unfortunately, A sporting chance doesn't work against heroes who don't need to or can't vanquish heroes, such as the Evil Queen and Ursula, in which case you just want to discard this as soon as possible. So speaking of as big as a house, this brings me on to my third card, as big as a house. So this gives you an almost guaranteed way to gain power quickly. It's a condition card that you play when another player gains 2 or more power, allowing you to also gain 2 power. This gives you the ability to play transformations more readily, and also gets you half the power you'll need to play I'll Make the Rules for a quick win if you need to defeat one specific transformation. Whilst I find Mim doesn't necessarily struggle for power, this gives you far more flexibility with the cards you can play, and getting this early is beneficial. I often find Mim has just the right amount of power to play 1 card or possibly 2, but she doesn't necessarily get a chance to play 2 cards. So by having as big as a house, gaining 2 power from that, it lets you use the swamp more readily instead of it just being a 1 power and discard, in which case you're better off going to the dueling ground if you don't plan on playing a card. So those are my top 3 cards. This brings me on to a special mention though, something I haven't really talked about much, and that's Mim's transformations. So Mim's transformations are essential for her victory, allowing her to defeat the specific Merlin transformation. However, each one also has a vanquish action built in, meaning you can make use of one even if the specific transformation it defeats isn't in play. Rattlesnake Mim and Tiger Mim are especially useful for this, as both defeat Mouse Merlin. Gives you a bit of redundancy and allows you to play a vanquish action where you need it. So not only are these good for vanquishing the heroes, but you've also got the vanquish action, which you're going to need. So I like to have a lot of, as mentioned, a lot of my transformations at the dueling ground. So here, but I also find it useful to have a vanquish action here or here. As players, your opponents will often end up moving your heroes over here, or if you're here and need to move away, you can then move over here and vanquish something that's here. So that's it for Mim really. I just find her strategy is line up all your transformations in one spot, line up all of the Merlin transformations in one spot, defeat as many of them in the turn, and then your opponents will just be forced to fate you, but your fate deck isn't particularly punishing to you given the combination of cards that you have. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and consider becoming a member of Mythical Meeples or supporting me on Patreon as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.